And welcome to another podcast where I chat with an expert. And today I have Nicholas Charles, who is an author of The 10 Pillars of Generational Wealth. So we're going to be discussing and learning a little bit about, most of us may think that very wealthy families, it's easy and it just goes on forever. We're going to find out what the case may be. But more importantly, irrespective of your own financial situation, there's some valuable guidance which Nicholas is going to be sharing with us today. So Nicholas, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you have ended up where you are and on this journey?
Yeah, great story. So in terms of generational wealth, I've been personally and professionally affected, or should I say influenced, by what is now termed as shirts leads to shirts leads within 3 generations. So first generation make it, second, if you're lucky, will save it, but the third generation will tank it. And this happens, unfortunately, to over 90% of families, which is horrendous. It happened to me, so I have not escaped this principle, shall we say. So great grandfather was a multimillionaire in his own right, yet by the time my father turned 8, it all gone, blown by his dad and his siblings, his elder siblings. So he had to restart the wealth process from scratch, from absolutely nothing. Created his own business and his own property portfolio, and he's sharing this story with me. I was I think about 14 years of age, sitting having an ice cream with my dad, and he tells me this story about how his grandfather was this brilliant businessman, yet his dad lost everything. And I'm worried. I mean, that's just sat in my psychology. Well, does that mean I'm destined to lose everything? Is that just the natural flow of things? And I didn't like that. It didn't resonate nicely with me. I really didn't like that subject, but it just sat there and it stayed with my subconscious for many, many years. Now, I ended up becoming, followed in my father's footsteps, became a qualified accountant, focused on taxation, and invested heavily in property and real estate and consultant clients on real estate. And I was approached on a professional level by a client who was referred to me. She wanted some forensic accounting. And essentially it was, look, Nicholas, I've got this significant property portfolio, but I'm not making any money. Isn't that strange? I'm like, that's very odd. So I did what I do best, looked into it. But the worrying thing about it is I had to turn around to her and sit her down, look her in the eye and say, look, the reason why you're not making any money from these properties is because your only sibling, the last surviving person in your family, because both her parents had died, she didn't have any other siblings, he's trying to steal your assets. That was not an easy story to share with her. It was very, very difficult. It took 7 years of very painful litigation to unravel, to correct, shall we say. And when I looked into it in a lot more detail, because I was part of that 7-year litigation battle, and it was not pleasant, it could have easily been avoided. The whole lot could have easily been avoided. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, surely her father did not want his legacy to be his only 2 children going to war with each other in court. I mean, no parent wants it. It happens all the time. All you need to do is go onto Google, Wikipedia, or open the front page of most newspapers, see time and time again disaster stories within the family dynamic, whether it's families going to war in court, or whether it goes from drug abuse right the way to suicide. It's horrible, and it's got nothing to do with it. And yet the professional industry is so focused on financial capital. It makes you wonder why, whilst the legislation's improved, lawyers have got better at what they do, accountants have got better, wealth advisors have got better, it still happens. Wealth's been around for thousands of years, and yet according to Forbes, 68% of the world's billionaires are still first generation. And that's a staggering statistic. It makes you wonder what has happened over the years. You'd assume there'd be 6, 7, 10, 9, whatever, 10 plus generations, very, very rich. And there are a few, but there are a minority. So that got me very, very interested in the whole subject of generational wealth, like why there's so many families that are failing, and more importantly, what are the successful families doing to keep it within the family. So end up writing my first book, which was an accident. I wanted to write it started as a report and ended up growing as a book. It was called The 4 Fundamentals of Family Prosperity. and that's available on my website. You can download it for free, or you can buy it on Amazon. And then in October 2022, I ended up co-writing this book with a private client lawyer called Generational Wealth. That is available also on Amazon. And we delved into a lot more detail in terms of why families fail, what it takes for families to succeed. And it was after I wrote this book, because I was frustrated, trying to get the message out so that families can understand what it takes to retain wealth. And like you rightly said, this problem affects all families, not just billionaires, not just single family offices. Their problems end up going into the press because of the amount of capital that we're dealing with. But I've seen families fall apart over a single house. I've literally, on a professional level, seen father and son go to court, literally wanting to kill each other over a single property. Like, what's the point? Yeah, it's ridiculous. And that relationship's gone. I mean, once you go to court, it's like a vase. It falls, it cracks, it breaks. Doesn't matter how you stick it back into place, those cracks will never disappear. It's too late. It's gone. And and I keep reiterating, which parent wants to have children and wants to see them, whether in their own life or after their lives, fall out with each other. No one does. So what's the solution to this very, very long-standing problem? And I was lucky enough because I was approached by a good friend of mine at the time, who's a tech genius called Maddie, and he told me there's a tech play in what you're trying to achieve, Nicholas, because consulting can only get you so far. And there are many consultants in this particular field who specialize in an aspect of generational wealth, whether it's from psychology to education. But you need all the pillars in place. All 10 pillars need to be put in place in order to facilitate that. And having a digital play enables you to reach out globally. Sorry,
Nicholas. All families work hard, and all families want to achieve more and get better for their children and so forth. So it's bizarre to be hearing that actually where most would consider the top of the tree, the top of the wealth, and struggle to hold on to it. So that's where you've done the research and written this book. So what would be? I know when I listened to podcasts and I hear stories, I think for me, part of the challenge starts actually from schooling, and from how we're brought up and what we're taught at school, and how we respect money and so forth. Would you agree with that? Or
yeah, schooling doesn't help. It's the school system. I'm not saying anything new here, but the school system fails its children. It's too linear. It's almost military, whereby you have a teacher that stands in front of the class and then just preaches a subject to the soldiers who are sitting in line and listening. But that's not an effective way of learning. And also the subjects that are taught at school. I mean, we're not taught things like nutrition. We're not taught how to handle money. We're not taught about investing. We're not taught about how to be good human beings. The reason, what inherited wealth in received in the hand that is not prepared or has been educated to receive that money is very, very dangerous and very damaging. I keep saying it's like giving a loaded gun to a child and saying, best of luck, don't pull the trigger. It's a disaster, and it happens all the time. I mean, let's deep into this, almost like psychology here. So you remember you're 21 years of age. I say to everyone when I've spoken about this on stage, you're 21 years of age, you're about to go to university, don't have a care in the world, and then someone that you've never met before in your life hands over you a check for £10 million. Says, here you go, best of luck with that, I'll see you later. What do? You go mad. I mean, where does the ambition go? Do you have any more ambition? Are you not prepared to receive this? What are you going to do? You're going to blow it. You blow it on fast cars, fast women, maybe a bit of gambling, certainly a lot of drugs, because you're not ready to receive this money. And there's a lot of psychology behind receiving such vast amounts of wealth. A lot of it is guilt. People don't think that they deserve to receive this money. So what they do, they just want to get rid of it. I mean, the classic case was the Vanderbilt family. So the Vanderbilts at the turn of the 20th century, Cornelius Vanderbilt was the richest man on the face of the planet. $100 billion, give or take the time value of money. Yet within 75 years, there wasn't a single millionaire within his family. 75 years, about 3 generations. They blew the whole lot. And the reason for that is because they treated it as a cancer. They treated it as a curse, all this inherited wealth. So what do you do with the cancer? You want to get rid of it as quick as possible. And on that level, they were very successful. They managed to get rid of all of it. And the Vanderbilt, even today, are seen as royalty within the United States. There are a lot of buildings named after the Vanderbilts, but not a single millionaire within that family. It's incredible.
So your book is the 10 pillars of lessons, research, and assisting many clients, which you do with wealth. So where does a typical family start? What's pillar 1?
So there's 4 inner pillars and 6 outer pillars. The book, by the way, I'm still writing, but the product still is currently available. So it's a consultancy piece that basically analyzes and creates a blueprint for wealth for each family. So every family is completely different and unique. I'm sure everyone can fully appreciate that. You're dealing with different personalities, different setup, and even the question of who's in your family yields very interesting results and responses. Especially if there's been multiple marriages within that family dynamic and children, stepchildren, it can get very complicated very quickly. And the emotion behind all of that. So the 4 inner pillars are your health, number 1, number 1 pillar, I should say, the vision for your wealth, education, which you mentioned, the next generation, and communication within the family dynamic. And virtually every family will fall out because of poor communication and not communicating that wealth to the next generation. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen is that families will keep the wealth a secret and not tell any of the beneficiaries what they're going to inherit. And then they pass away and it's all left in a will. And irrespective of how tax efficient that will is or how marvelous it's been created, the inevitable will be that that family will fall apart because of the emotions behind inheriting wealth. Even if you divide money perfectly equally amongst, say, your children, they'll still create an emotional conflict because you haven't spoken about who's getting what and why. There's an example here. Was a family that had 2 sons and 2 daughters. The daughters and this family, very successful, great business and a property portfolio. They gave the properties to the daughters because they weren't involved in the business, and the business to the sons. Now, technically, they're worth the same value, but property is passive. You will make money on property as long as you can rent it out. Not much effort required to maintain a property portfolio. Whereas a business, as I'm sure you're fully aware, you need to work very hard in order to keep it successful. So that created animosity between the siblings. They're like, wait a second, yeah, it's technically the same value, but we have to work bloody hard to make this business or achieve success with this business. You guys don't have to do anything. Why can't we have a few passive investments? And it just all kicked off. Because the parents didn't think it would be a good idea to discuss this with my next generation.
I mean, communication is humans' biggest challenge, full stop, isn't it? So, but basically, irrespective again of your family, the best thing is what you're saying is let's iron it out and almost have a group meeting before any parting, I'm going to say, and just get that open while the person who's making those wishes can actually say, well, this is what I'm doing, and these are the explanations. Is that what you encourage, or?
100%. Even transition within a business. If you're running a successful business, say your first generation, and your hope or wish is to then pass that business to the next generation, whether it be your son or your daughter, for example, you need to be having those conversations now. Don't wait until retirement, because that's way too late, because you need to prepare them to be able to take over, your CEO role, for example. And does it not make sense for you to be around to facilitate the transition? But more importantly, you need to ask the next generation if they even want it. A lot of children don't. They're happy working within the business. They may have no interest at all in taking over. They may want to do their own thing. And usually, again, not always, but the best CEOs are those that leave the business, learn for themselves, and then come back into the business.
Yeah.
Don't force your values on your children or your grandchildren. Don't push what you assume is best for them. because that will create an argument.
So we've got the four inner pillars, which obviously
they're the foundation of generational wealth.
Foundation pillars. So the other six obviously come off those. Where would you start with those?
So that's when you get involved in the actual data itself. So you've got your structures, your legal structures, who owns what and where. Can get very complicated within a family dynamic that's very wealthy, especially when you're starting to acquire, properties. You've got multiple businesses. We live in a global world now. It's very easy to create a company in Guernsey, Jersey, BVI, Dubai, Luxembourg, UK. It's not difficult, but then it gets very complicated. I'll give you an example. Let's take property, for example. So property in the 80s and 90s, it was very fashionable for those living offshore, not living in England, to buy properties through offshore vehicles. Fast forward to today, that strategy no longer works at all. In fact, you're worse off owning a UK property in an offshore company. So, but if you don't know this, if you don't understand or appreciate your structures, you're not going to end up dealing with it. And you need to be proactive. Don't expect your fiduciaries or your advisors to come back to you and say, actually, the thing that we're making a lot of money on, it doesn't work for you anymore. Fiduciaries get paid to facilitate these offshore companies. So structure is one of them. Your assets, what do you own? How wealthy are you? Have you made money? Have you not made money? Again, once you're investing, we see this with private equity. It's very easy to invest in companies and then sort of not quite lose interest, but lose maybe misplace or forget how much you invested in that company 5-6 years ago. Has it done well? Maybe you got some tax relief for it, SCIS or EIS relief, but has it actually made any money? Who knows? The great story about that is one of my business partner, when he exited one of his businesses, there was one particular investor that he lost track of, and he had to appoint a private investigator to find his investor so that he could pay him his money because he sold the business.
Yeah,
incredible. And it was not a small amount of money. It was over £100,000. So not an insignificant amount of money. And he had to find his investor. So assets is the other one. So we said structures, assets, philanthropy, absolutely key. I mentioned to you what do the most successful families in the world do. They all have one thing in common: philanthropy. Why is that? Because the giving of wealth creates a purpose greater than the individual needs of each and every family member. And that's a very, very powerful tool. It also provides phenomenal goodwill for the family name. So you want to leave a legacy and you want to leave a goodwill legacy, philanthropy is a key part of that. So yeah, philanthropy is really key. It also brings the family together. It's a lot easier. I mentioned communication, the pillar, that you now see the interaction between the two pillars. Much easier to talk about giving wealth than it is about inheriting wealth. Less emotion surrounding that. But at the same time, it's important to get every family member involved. So as a family, what is it? What inspires you as a family? What do you want to give? Where do you want to give? Do you want to help out in particular projects, or do you want to simply just give money to certain charities that are doing good in a field, whether it's the environment, medicine, poverty, you name it? There's thousands and thousands of charities out there. They all do good stuff. But it's important to not just give money blindly, but give money that actually has some sort of inspiration behind it.
Yes, so I'd imagine that I can really see how that would help any family to really have that focus, even if they change the focus every year to try and be even, or they've got multiples. But it's also that mentally feel good, isn't it? It will release those good feelings into what is a pressurized scenario dealing with money, irrespective of how much it is stress dealing with money. So I'd imagine has really positive mental benefits as well as your name and doing good for the community.
Of course it does. Is there a better feeling than saving other people's lives? Clearly there isn't. And seeing for yourself that the money that you work so hard for is helping others and making a difference, not just to yourself but to others. Whether it's building schools, Now, I've got a client of mine. He's an insurance broker, and he's currently in Tanzania, and he literally looks after 9 schools over in Tanzania and provides their infrastructure, whether it's wells, pumps, toilet facilities for young girls who are struggling to go to school, and it makes a huge difference. And he loves it, absolutely loves it, and you can see from the delight in his eyes when he talks about, you know, how much he helps this organization. So again, you know, whatever inspires you, that's the key thing. That's the key message.
Get it.
So another pillar is documentation. Really, really important. Where are your most valuable documents? We spoke about litigation. One of the very common forms of litigation is the will. And you've seen quite a few instances when wills are doctored, or when they're magically lost and then they reappeared, or it's a different will appears and all of a sudden the family just get involved. So keep your documents safeguarded, keep them in one place and revisit them. And I'm talking even documents behind your assets themselves. So again, assets and documents clearly linked together. If you have a family constitution, you know, get the family involved. Where do you keep that family constitution? Do you revisit it? How often do you revisit it? Again, how often do you communicate about the family constitution? The worst thing that I've seen happen with certain wealthy families is when the principal of the family, the patriarch or the matriarch, they'll write this brilliant constitution and then they'll force it on their next generation. What's going to happen? As soon as he or she passes away, that constitution will go straight in the bin. No one's involved. So the Rothschilds, by the way, do this brilliantly. So every year they have a family council meeting of every member of the family that wants to be part of the family. It's not everyone goes, but if you want to be part of the family and you want to be part of the family bank, which is quite significant, you need to attend that meeting at least once. And that's one of their rules. Again, a great way of setting up rules. You know, how as a family do we stand for? How do we deal with things like conflict? Small things, but it adds up and it's important to have. So every time there's an argument and you've got a written document, it's like having a partnership agreement or shareholders agreement. You always create these. Why? You create them because when something happens, and it always does, you have a written document that everyone agreed to fall back on. Well, what did we say we should be doing? Oh, let's open the document. Okay. Now we can have a proper conversation. A lot of businesses fail because they don't have the right, documents in place, because they're, I've seen directors fall out because when they set up the company, they were brothers in arms, and we'll never fall out. We'll never have an argument. And what happens? An argument happens. There's nothing to fall back on. There was no agreement in place. So it's one versus the other, kicking and screaming. So again,
and I'd imagine it's worse in families as well. Because you have got that emotion, and it's not fair, it is fair, and so forth. Worse than in a business.
So I mean, I've got one particular family that he wants his daughter to sign. He wants his daughter's husband to sign a prenup. Again, these are becoming more and more common now.
Yeah,
that is an easier conversation to have if you agree that prenups are part of your family constitution.
Yes,
because it's a rule. We agreed it. We agreed it when you were whatever years, how old you were. That's the rules. And anyone coming into the family, like, well, sorry guys, but we agreed this is a family. It is what it is. Either you sign it, or unfortunately, we can't be together. Harsh as it sounds, but it's a lot harder to have that conversation if it's not part of what your family does.
So what would be the next pillar you'd suggest people look at?
So far, we spoke about 4 key pillars: your assets, your documents, your structures, your philanthropy. And now it's important to discuss advisors. Key to any family dynamic, key to any successful business as well. It's very, very important to have what I call accountable advisors. And we mentioned the key pillar, which was communication. It's very important that the family not only bridges the gap between themselves as a family, but also between them and their advisors. So advisors will only give advice in accordance with the instructions that you give to them. Don't ever expect any advisor to read your mind or be a telepath. If you want good advice, let's take, for example, you want tax advice. or you want estate planning, really key topic here. You want estate planning. How important is it for that advisor to be given access to all your assets, all your documents? These are the pillars coming out now, so that you can have a better conversation with that advisor, so that he or she can then focus on what they do best, which is give advice. If you give incorrect or incomplete data to your advisor, do not expect brilliant advice to come back, because they will do what that's been instructed. And this is a bane. I will defend lawyers. Very rarely do I defend lawyers, but I will in this particular case. You know, their bane is, and I've seen this time and time again with lawyers, where they say, oh, if only I was told X, Y, Z, my advice 2 years ago would have been so much different. And we had it with so Antoinetta Proctor was my co-author for Generational Wealth. And we shared this great story where she gave tax advice to this lovely Italian lady who lived in England. And she said, my assets, all in England. I have no overseas assets. Brilliant. So she set up a UK trust for her and a UK will. Fantastic. Sadly, the lady passed away, and Antoinetta got an irate phone call from some Italian beneficiaries who said, by the way, your client, who's now passed away, was the main shareholder of a significant Italian company. Oh dear. Okay, and the problem with that is, for those who don't know or appreciate, Italy does not recognize UK wills and doesn't recognize UK trusts. In short, that's a disaster. It took 4 years to unravel that problem, because the client is no longer alive to be able to change it. So how important is it for you to be hand in hand with your advisors, give them the right documentation, give them the right instructions, be clear on what it is that you want to do, either within your business or as a family, and what you're trying to achieve. Time and again, so many families give incorrect advice, or they think they want one thing and they go straight to lawyers before they have a discussion within the family dynamic. Have the conversation first, and then bring in the lawyers or the professional advisors to ensure that whatever it is that you want as a family is implemented correctly. Do not go legal first. That's the worst thing you can do, and that will create fallout within your family dynamic.
But when it comes down to advisors, I mean, advisors, there's so many niches, isn't there, in irrespective of what the skill set is. I mean, where do you start to find advisors, to know what, I mean, number one, you've got to know what advisors you need.
Yes.
Number two, you've got to have faith that the advisor you're talking to is I'm going to say, a genuine expert in whatever field it is, and may be quite comfortable to push you towards someone else who may be more niche. I mean, where does any family start with that?
That's a brilliant question. You need to appreciate, first and foremost, that every advisor is your employee, and they need to be treated as such. You are paying them for a service. Therefore, you'll never bring in an employee into your business without interviewing them. Surely, you want to find out, are they any good? Are they the right fit? Yes, their CV might say they're the best at X, Y, and Z, but is that true? Then you probably want to try them out, maybe on a probationary period, 3 to 6 months, to see if they can walk their talk, and then you decide if you want to keep them or not. Everyone does that with employees. No one does that with advisors, which I find shocking. They'll stick to an advisor. I've seen this time and again with accountants. They'll moan to their friends about their lawyer, accountant, wealth advisor, and they'll do nothing about it. Like, you are paying these people to give you a service. If you're unhappy, first explain to the advisor why you're unhappy and what it is that you actually want, because maybe they don't even know. So speak to them.
Yeah.
And if they're not serving you, then replace them, because there's lots and lots of advisors out there who would love to take on your business. Now, I get the fact that some of the best advisors out there are very niche and they can be hard to find, but reach out to those people that you trust. Reach out to people who are brilliant at whatever it is that you're looking for. So if you've got a particular tax problem, I'm sure someone within your community has had a similar tax problem. Well, who did they use? And were they happy with that person? Start there. It's a great place to start, because it's a trusted introduction. first and foremost. But then again, when you meet them, interview them, grill them, it might be something as simple like a clash of personalities. They might be the best advisor in the world, but you just don't get on with them, whatever reason. No problem. Move on. And if you're really unhappy with them and they're not serving you and they're just sending you a bill and they're providing zero value, we can get rid of them. I don't understand what the issue is. I love being made accountable. The great advisors in this world love being made accountable because it gives them a platform to show you how good they are. Poor advisors will hide behind complex terminology. I've seen this in the wealth industry, whereby certain commissions, should we say, were very well hidden. And then, when you ask them the question, how much am I paying? And they're like, yeah, well, it's quite complicated to explain. It's not complicated. Why are you hiding? Tell me how much am I paying for your service? Can't tell me. That doesn't rest well with me.
So my background is very sort of connected with the FCA regulations, and with that, there's a clear, defined difference between a regulated client and an unregulated client at this moment in time, as of January 2025, on what does and does not need to be declared as far as revenue and incomes are concerned, and different businesses. Either it's up to the business at the moment to decide, actually, do you not make the defined difference between the two, regulated and unregulated, which many businesses do make that decision. But is that the same with the advice you may be getting from your advisors, that if you're over a certain wealth as a family, then they don't have to be so transparent in what they're earning, or is that totally different in this industry?
So, wow, complicated question, but I'll break it down as simple as possible. If you're talking on the realm of tax, then yeah, by all means, get tax advice. The 10 pillars doesn't actually provide advice per se. What it looks at is all the current risk areas to your wealth strategy in terms of succeeding and creating a successful generational wealth strategy. If you are unsure, and I've seen this time again where the families have got structures that are just not fit for purpose. They've got so many companies set up, spread over the planet, that they need to go back to those advisors and say, how much money am I actually saving by implementing this particular strategy? Am I saving tax, first and foremost? Mm-hmm. If you're not, then why do I have these convoluted, complex structures? Do I need them? Can I get rid of them? How much money will I save to get rid of these structures? It's very simple questions that need to be asked. But a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know what happens. I just pay my advisor and it ticks along. It's like, why are you doing that? Clearly, if you're going to do something in a specific country, you need to find an advisor in that country. But also, if you're, say, for example, you're residing in Dubai and you want to buy a property in England, clearly you're going to need some legal advice in England to acquire that property, and that can't be provided. Well, it can in the IFC in Dubai, but it's better to have someone on the ground in England to provide that property advice. You may then need some tax advice on acquiring that property, because that will involve things like stamp duty. If you're buying in your own name, you need to look at things like income tax if you're going to be renting out. There's ATED, there's capital gains tax. So you can prep for the best way to purchase that particular asset by having someone on the ground who's based in England, if that's the country you're acquiring a property, who can give you the tax advice, and then maybe you need a lawyer to give you that legal advice. So everyone's different, but understand where it is you're from, understand and be clear on what it is you're trying to achieve, what country that is you're trying to achieve that in, and then seek the person who is the expert in that particular field.
Okay, so it is, as you say, exactly as if you were interviewing someone for a job. Consider what the questions are you want to be asking, rather than saying what the end solution is. But whatever the questions are, list them as you would do in an interview, get those answers. Or if it's a project you're giving out, or contract, or whatever it is, all those things you would do in business, you treat it exactly the same.
I mean, I've seen so many times people go to wealth advisors like, make me money. That means nothing to any wealth advisor. I mean, what's your risk? You know, how do you want to make money? Do you want to invest in property? Why do you want to invest in property? Do you want to go do something passive? How much time do you have in terms of your investing? How much money do you want to invest? What's your risk profile? Do you want to go stocks and shares, funds, and how do you want to put it in a tax wrapper so it's tax efficient? Only you can answer that particular question. How much fees do you want to pay? Do you want it to be managed or do you want it to be passive? Passive is cheaper than active. Do you know the difference between the two? Find out. Ask these questions. Don't go, or I see people go to tax files and go, save me tax. Why? I remember this story. One guy approached me, goes, I want to sell these properties. Can you save me capital gains tax? So why do you want to sell the properties? Oh, because I want to make money. Okay, why do you want to make money for? Goes, oh, because I want to invest in property. I go, but doesn't your existing portfolio make you money? Goes, yeah. Go, are they in a good location? Yes. Okay, let me give you some great tax advice. Don't sell them. You pay zero tax. I didn't get the client, by the way, but he loved me for it. I didn't give him any advice. Technically, I gave him no advice. How many people would have said, yeah, sell them all. I'll give you some great tax advice.
Yeah.
You're not serving your client. Take a step back and ask the questions and delve in to find out what it is the client actually wants to achieve. In this particular case, he thought he wanted to sell his portfolio and buy another portfolio, which made no sense. But he never considered this. Like what he was trying to achieve made no sense. His mindset was, I need to save tax. I need to save tax. Instead of opening up and say, actually, I want a property portfolio that I can retire on.
So how are we doing with the pillars, Nicholas?
We've got one more left.
We've got one more left. And what's the last pillar then?
Governance is
Governance.
The whole thing that wraps it all together.
Okay.
So I tell business owners, and they get this because they run a business. I go, how do you run your business? Well, we have a board of directors. I go, great. And does everyone have roles and responsibilities within that board? Well, of course we do. And do you have shareholders? Yes, we do. Do you have shareholders agreement? Yes, we do. And how often do you meet with your board of directors? Once a week, once a month. And what do you discuss? We discuss the vision of the business and where we want to go and how we can get there. That's magnificent. Okay, what do you do with your family? And then there's this eerie silence. Oh, what do you mean? What am I doing with my family? Okay, how often do you meet with your family to discuss the business of being a family? What are the roles and responsibilities within your family dynamic at the moment? Is everything in your head? What happens if you were to die? How well placed would your family be now? Say you get run over by a bus tomorrow. Ooh. Has your spouse ever met your advisors? Have your children ever met your advisors? Does anyone know how to take over the business? Do you even know what happens to your shares? Do your business partners want the shares to go to your spouse and then end up going into business with your spouse? Have you even asked them? Maybe we've spoken about this. No, because what you're thinking about is we're tunnel orientated on making money today. Nothing wrong with that, but you've got to prepare for the worst. You need to be having those conversations with your children because at the end of the day, you are not going to be here forever. Surprise, surprise, you're not going to live forever. And that is a surprise, by the way, to people. No one assumes that they're going to die, which is incredible because it's an emotional issue that no one wants to discuss. But guess what? It's going to happen. So how well prepared are the next generation for the inevitable? Whether it's today or in 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, doesn't make a difference. How well prepared are they? Where are your documentation? How many bank accounts do you have? Where are they kept? England, offshore? Who has access to them? Do you have who even knows about your wealth? Do you have stocks and shares? Do you have funds? Who manages it? Who's your wealth advisor? What happens to that fund when you pass away? That can be, you can save your family a significant amount of problems by having this discussion like today. Whether it's something simple, and I mentioned to you, taking over the family business. Have you had those conversations with your children? Have you asked them, does anyone want to take over? Does anyone have a vested interest? Because if they don't, then sell, keep the cash and split the cash with the next generation. Support them in their ventures, whatever they may be, whether it's business or whether it's life in general. Have those conversations now that you're alive. It's so important. No one ever runs a business on hope. Yeah, I see so many families use hope as their strategy for their families. Disaster. Don't do it. If you're going to learn anything from today's podcast, is don't rely on hope as a strategy for generational wealth. It's an absolute disaster. But so many families do it. That's why 90% fail. There's a reason for this. And it's got nothing to do And I even spoke about the tax advice. I never mentioned inheritance tax or setting up your assets in a tax efficient manner, whether it's in wills or trusts. No. Communication, vision for the wealth, philanthropy, documents, structures, governance. You see where I'm coming from?
Yes,
Education, educate next generation, advisors. It all comes together in a circular pillars, the 10 pillars of generational wealth. And if you don't have them in place, you're guaranteed to fail. But the 4 key ones, the 4 inner ones, absolutely, they're the foundations of generational wealth. Have those in place first. If you've got a lot of wealth, then the outer pillars have a play in that. But the 4 inner ones, irrespective, if you've got any wealth, if you run a business, you've got a portfolio of assets, then you must implement those 4 inner pillars.
But I would suggest, even if you haven't, and that's your aspiration, everything you said to me today in this podcast is just really good foundational. Here we are as a family, we want to progress, and these are our goals. Let's talk about it this month, decide what everyone's doing, and next month, next quarter, do the same. How do we do? And keep pushing it. Because I'd imagine, irrespective of the wealth of the family, if the family wants to drive forward and achieve, then actually you're making it what I call everyone's on the same train. And everyone
I agree. Well, what is wealth? People fail to appreciate what is wealth because the misassumption is just financial capital. It's not. It really isn't. Financial capital is an aspect of wealth, but so is human, intellectual, and social capital. And you're right. It's like, what are you communicating? What are you passing down to your children? And if you want to pass down the wealth, then pass down all the wealth to the next generation. And that includes your experiences, your expertise, your stories. You want your legacy to last, you have to pass this down to the next generation. I'm not talking about financial capital. Yeah, that's an aspect. You need to pass down human, intellectual, and social capital. What does it mean to be a good, kind human being? What sort of issues did you deal with in your past? What was it like to start a business up? How difficult was it? What did you go through? How did you get past it? What sort of lessons can you then pass down to the next generation so they don't make the same mistakes that you did when you were younger and you were in their age? Massive. It's absolutely fundamental.
And yeah, I mean, everyone knows, well, Andrew from the Academy World, and one of the things we do is we support businesses with processes, systems, and AI and various things like that. And it's never, ever been so easy as it is now to share. For me, one of the largest bits of wealth is your knowledge. And if you are a successful person, again, irrespective of what it is, there's never been so easy to actually do I'm going to call it a brain dump. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say that anymore. Into something, so someone could ask, I wonder what is the answer to this. This isn't legal. This is just knowledge, thought. How does that person get from A to B, and all the rest of it's never been so easy as it is now.
No, I agree. We're actually building that within Dante. It's called Legacy GPT.
Okay, well, that's a good hook then in, wasn't it? So we haven't mentioned Dante. So we've talked about your book, which people can get from Amazon, The 10 Pillars of Generational Wealth.
It's my first generational wealth.
Tell us, Nicholas, obviously, who are you looking for as your client? And very quickly, well, what is Dante and how do you assist people?
Dante, as we spoke about very, very early on, created between myself and my tech business partner, who's a Y Combinator alumni. So he managed to raise money from the most successful VC in Silicon Valley called Y Combinator, who invested in small startups like Airbnb, LinkedIn, I think, Stripe. These little billion-dollar companies, should we say? And he managed to get invested from them. So we've created a platform that's utilized the 10 pillars of generational wealth to help create an operational system for families to run their office from. So they have a system to run the business of being a family by focusing on those 10 pillars. So we've created the 6 outer pillars, so you can store all your assets. So you have them all in one place on a dashboard. All your documentations can be stored there. We have a CRM system of advisors.
wow.
All your structures are in place, so you can see all your legal structures at a touch of a button. Every time you enter an asset, the system will ask you who's the legal owner, because there's a difference between the legal owner and the beneficial owner, and you can actually see what it is that you've created. Again, helps facilitate better conversations with your advisors. It's a system that can be shared with your advisors. So it's built on microservers, where initially you can share as much or as little as you like of your portfolio of assets with whoever you like. So if you've got a portfolio of property in England, you can share that with whoever manages your portfolio in England, and they'll only be able to see that. If you've got some estate planning, you can literally share the entire data, the entire dashboard with your lawyer. So they won't make the same mistake as that lovely Italian lady that we spoke about earlier, because all the information is there, all the assets are there, so that the advisor can then focus on doing what they do best, which is give advice. All your loans can be stored there as well. So how many, how much money have you borrowed? It's very important to keep a track of. And we utilize things like APIs as well to pull in data from all quoted assets. So we have currently 19,000 banks on our system. So we can, if you're banking with one of them, we can pull all the balances in. So you can see at any one time how much money you've got in your multiple currencies or your multiple bank accounts. Again, very, very important. And what does that facilitate? That facilitates good governance, because you've got everything all in one place. We've even got philanthropy as well. Again, one of the key outer pillars that we mentioned. So you can document, budget how much money you're giving, who you're giving to. We've even got a little system that enables every family member to vote in which area that they want to give to. So you as a family can come together and create a strategy for your philanthropy. Document it, put it on the system. You can share that with all your family members.
Okay, so it's time, folks, for a bit of a shameless plug. So Nicholas, if you know anyone who would be in need or interested in the services Nicholas has said, then there'll be a link below this podcast or whatever system you're listening to make contact. And I know, Nicholas, you do give rewards out, I'm going to say, for successful introductions, just to put a bit of a sweetener on there.
Yes, no, we do. We are very generous with our commissions. And we'll happily to share the wealth, as the saying goes, with anyone that provides good introductions and they sign up to the Dante platform. Initially, we utilize the 10 pillars. That's our engagement tool. So bona fide family offices will see for themselves where they are today, and we create a blueprint from that. So they'll get a report. And if they then want the solution, that's where Dante steps in, because Dante is the digital solution to help facilitate those 10 pillars. If you want to find out more about us, we're Dante.io, D-A-N-T-I, not Dante with an E, it's Dante with an I, .io, and all our information details are available there.
And also, I think you said you were going to share a link with us, which we could share with our listeners, where they can just go on and do a quick survey to see a high overlook of where they may be at this moment.
Yes, we're in the process of creating a shortened version of the 10 pillars. They can go online. Again, it'll be on our website. You literally just click the button. It'll take about 10 minutes for you to answer a few questions, and you get a very basic report, but it's an eye-opener, because it asks some very in-depth questions. Short and sharp, 5-10 minutes, fill that out, you get an instant report straight back to you to see where you are today.
Brilliant. Okay, so Nicholas, thank you very much for your time. Today's podcast was brought to you by the Academy World. Our main core business is supporting SMEs and businesses around the world. If you're a startup, or you're looking at exit route, or you're looking at managing it, we have experts in our connections, like Nicholas, irrespective where you are. So if you need any support with your business, then please do make contact, and we'll put you in contact with the right expert or assist you directly ourselves. Meanwhile, Nicholas, thanks so much for your valuable time today.
It's a pleasure, Andrew. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good stuff. Okay, good luck. Take care now.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.